Nobody, and I mean nobody, wanted that mangy dog at the market that morning. You could almost feel the disgust rolling off the crowd, like heat off the dusty ground. But here's the twist. That worthless-looking mutt? He was about to make one desperate man richer and more notorious than anyone could have guessed. And it all started with a decision that seemed more like a surrender than a choice. Thorne Shepherd stood at the far edge of the livestock market, feeling the weight of every coin he had left. Just 5 silvers, not enough for a single good meal, let alone a miracle. The sun was brutal, punishing his back as wealthy ranchers strutted through the stalls, trading horses and cattle like kings. Thorne's ranch was dying, foreclosure hanging over his head like a vulture. Last week, the bank men came, cold eyes, stiff suits, measuring every inch of his land, every sick cow, every empty field. You ever felt so small that your shadow disappears? Yeah, that was me. Or, well, Thorne, just a man waiting for the world to admit he'd lost. Right when hope seemed as far off as those blue mountains, Thorne spotted Cassidy Flynn in a corner, trying to sell a dog that looked more like a worn-out mop than any kind of animal. Skinny, ribs showing, fur dull and patchy, Copper was more dead than alive, but there was something about his eyes. Some dogs look at you with a sort of dumb hope, but this one, he looked right through you, sizing you up, reading your story. Flynn shouted about best hunting stock in the territory, but the crowd just laughed or waved him off. You could see his price dropping, 20, 15, 10, 5. Still nothing. The humiliation in Flynn's eyes was almost worse than the dog's misery. Something made Thorne move closer, even as everyone else turned away. He knelt, studied Kappa's face. There it was, that spark, like the dog was in on some private joke the rest of the world hadn't figured out yet. Thorne felt it deep in his gut, maybe the last flutter of hope he had. So, against every shred of common sense, he handed Flynn the last of his silver, bought the dog nobody wanted, and tried not to wince at the sound of the crowd snickering behind his back. "You just bought yourself a heap of trouble, friend," called Virgil Claymore, that big cattle dealer with boots too clean for real work. Claymore's laughter drew a crowd, and soon everyone was pointing, whispering, taking bets on how long before Thorne regretted the purchase. But Copper, well, he pressed in close to Thorne's leg, like he understood the rules of being the underdog. Then something changed. As Claymore strutted past, Coppa's nose shot up, his whole body went stiff, like he'd caught a scent no one else could. Next thing, Copper was yanking out of Thorne's grip, barreling toward Claymore's fancy wagon, and digging with a wild urgency that had the whole market gawking. Claymore started shouting, swinging his whip, but that dog just kept tearing at the boards, until suddenly, with a crack and a yelp, a stash of gold coins, silver, jewelry, and leather pouches tumbled out, sparkling in the sun for all to see. The silence was thick. Then came the mutters, the shifting eyes. "That's stolen gold," someone whispered. It didn't take long for the truth to settle. Claymore, the territory's most respected merchant, was a thief, hiding his loot in plain sight. The sheriff appeared like fate itself, asking questions, listening to excuses, and eyeing Copper with something like awe. Flynn, the ex-owner, just shook his head and said, "Friend, that dog's about to change your life." The law in those parts was clear. Recovered stolen goods meant a reward. 20%, said the sheriff, and Thorne's mind raced. $3,000, more money than he'd ever imagined. But while Thorne reeled from his luck, the market crowd started to shift. No more laughter. Now there was hunger in their eyes, greedy calculations. Offers poured in. "I'll give you 500, one said. 1,000, shouted another. Some promised partnerships. Others whispered about the places Copper could lead them, the fortunes he could find. But Thorne, broke, tired, and suddenly the owner of the most remarkable dog anyone had seen, refused. "He's not for sale." Maybe he was stubborn, maybe just loyal, but Copper had chosen him, and Thorne wasn't about to trade that for anything. What none of them realized was that this dog's nose wasn't just lucky. It was a map to things no one else could see. On the ride home, the air was tense. Thorn should have felt free, but there was a chill running up his spine, like he was being followed. Copper trotted beside the horse, more alert than ever, sniffing the wind, ears twitching. Cresting the last hill before home, Thorn's heart dropped. Strange horses outside his house, smoke from the chimney he hadn't lit, and a sick feeling twisting in his gut. He crept up with Copper, peeking through a dusty window. 3 men inside, dressed too fine for country thieves, rummaging through his things like they owned the place. "He'll be back soon," one said. "When he does, we make our offer. If he says no, we take the dog and leave him to rot." Thorn's blood boiled, but Copper was already moving, low and quiet, toward the barn. Inside, Copper dug like a machine, this time unearthing an old box hidden beneath the hay. Inside, Thorn found papers, mining claims, deeds, and legal documents, all bearing his father's name. Turns out, his dad had left more than a ranch. He'd left the key to a fortune, hidden away from greedy eyes. But footsteps crunched outside, and Thorn barely had time to stuff the box away before the 3 men barged in, guns drawn. The leader, a scar-faced brute named Burke, smiled like a rattlesnake. "This isn't a negotiation," he sneered, circling closer. "We're taking the dog, one way or another." His men fanned out, blocking every exit. Copper, never one to back down, growled low and deep, planting himself between Thorn and the guns. But here's where things flipped. Copper didn't attack. Instead, he lunged for a hanging rope, biting clean through it. A ton of old farm tools and wooden beams crashed down, throwing the room into chaos. Thorn grabbed the box and dove for cover with Copper as gunshots filled the air. Through the dust, Copper led him to a secret gap in the wall, into an old root cellar. They escaped, barely, but could hear Burke cursing and shouting orders, his men tearing the place apart. Sitting in the dark, Thorn stared at Copper. This wasn't just a smart dog. This was a partner. Then, as the search outside intensified, Copper began digging again, finding a cache of old dynamite and a fuse, his father's supplies for clearing tree stumps, forgotten until now. Thorn worked quickly, setting charges beneath the barn. With a final glance, he lit the fuse, and he and Copper slipped out to the trees. The explosion was deafening, flattening the barn and trapping Burke's men under a mountain of debris. Sheriff Morton, drawn by the noise, arrived to haul away the crooks, listening as they confessed everything for a shot at freedom. In the aftermath, with the sun setting fire to the sky, Thorn stood beside Copper, his loyal companion. He had the reward, the mining claims, a future brighter than he'd dared to imagine, and something even rarer, a friendship born of desperation, tested by danger and proven true. The story of the rancher and his extraordinary dog spread like wildfire, and soon everyone had an opinion. Was Copper blessed or just brilliant? Was Thorn a lucky fool or a man who saw value where others saw trash? And maybe, just maybe, the real treasure wasn't the gold or the land, but the trust between a man and his dog, a bond no amount of money could buy. But as Thorn looked into Coppa's eyes, wondering just how many more secrets that dog held, he couldn't help but think, this story was only just beginning. So, what do you think, folks? Was justice served, or did fortune just smile on the right fool at the right time? Would you have risked it all on a dog no one wanted? Drop your thoughts below. Let's see where you stand on luck, loyalty, and what makes something truly valuable out here on the frontier.